Smart 24, driving business.
The decisions we make now will affect generations to come, which is why we must choose the path of hope, optimism, and urgency to repair our planet. Thank you.
Private land titles in Central Forest Reserves. This has costed us in terms of degrading the forests and also costed us in terms of funds. Once titles are created, the owners would want to occupy the area.
Carbon is going to be one of the most expensive commodities in the years to come. So Uganda has a very high potential to tap onto that.
All right, welcome to Smart 24 TV. I'm Ivan TIBENKANA. Smart 24 TV, channel 394 on GoTV and then 372 on DSTV. This is the green economy. Like usually it comes through every week. So we talk about different issues, different concerns regarding sustainable development over time. And like I usually say, human population is growing, and then the demand for services likewise is growing. But then how do we carry on all these sustainably? It's one of the biggest concerns. So getting into this very episode of the green economy, December is the month that we are in, and obviously 2022 is coming to the fall. There has been quite fast getting into this very moment. But we've had goals that we set before, and how we fulfill them is something that we need to reflect on. But the environment, the economy, those are crucial elements of our development. So getting into today, globally, there are so many things that happen. We had the Earthshot Prize. Prince William coming through the Earthshot Prize, inspired by the John F. Kennedy moonshot. And then getting into the very matter of today's conversation, we shall be looking into the carbon trading. Why the market has had a rough time sitting into Africa and then Uganda specifically. But besides that, the lead up to carbon trading has had Uganda at its own pedestal, paying a price for its own problems, the air pollution. Talk about Kampala, the different areas, particulate matter 2.5. Most of our roads are quite needy, and they are not tarmacked. There's an issue to that. We have the industries and then the pollution. We have the automobiles, motorcycles, vehicles, all together. They compile up to the greenhouse contribution, the gases, from the carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, you could talk about methane, among other gases. So all that we shall be talking about. But to start with, when you look at the globe, worldwide, climate action is one of the biggest concerns, and this year it's been at the forefront. Previously we had the COP27, where they had to sit down and then look into the direction that the economy worldwide, the different economies need to take to incorporate sustainable development. But importantly, preserving and then sustaining, maintaining the ecosystem. So to start with, we shall be looking into the Earthshot Prize. What exactly does the Earthshot Prize represent? From Oman, that's Hassan Talal, who came in with 44.1, carbonizing, rather mineralizing carbon dioxide through peridotite, a mineral rock, rather a rock. And then when you talk about India, there is Katie, the smallholder farmers globally that contribute to a very big number, but then and still contributing a third of global food, are still suffering of the effects of climate change. So of that, we have the development that promotes production, that minimizes costs or costly production, effects of climate change onto sustainable food production. That's Katie for us, the Earthshot Prize. And then there is some other element, Notpla, a UK-based startup that decided to venture into creating technology that limits plastic packaging. And plastic packaging is one of our biggest problems. How often do we account for the disposals of material that we've used to carry the products of maybe the streets, the things that we buy, things that we purchase from the supermarkets, and then other markets still. So NotPla came in with the innovation that transforms seaweed into a biodegradable packaging asset. We shall be looking into that still. And then when you talk about Africa, Kenya came through, Mukuru Clean Stoves, basically looking at cleaning our air. So from the different elements such as fixing our climate to cleaning our air and then reviving the oceans, among others, all those together, they were incorporated in the Earth Shot Prize. 5 winners, it will be an annual event. So starting in 2020, right into 2022, still going through. Prince William, first let's have a look at what the Earth Shot Prize had for us.
The Earth Shot Prize, just like the John F. Kennedy Moonshot, is an initiative by Prince William of the United Kingdom, one that intends to promote environmental sustainability and development.
Good evening. We at the Earthshot Prize are all so grateful for the welcome we've received this evening here in Boston over the last few days. When I founded this prize in 2020, it was with the ambition to harness the same spirit of ingenuity that inspired President John F. Kennedy to challenge the American people to put a person on the moon within a decade. So it has been an honor to share the stories of our Earthshot winners and finalists from the heart of his hometown. I believe that the Earthshot solutions you've seen this evening prove we can overcome our planet's greatest challenges. And by supporting and scaling them, we can change our future.
The annual event intends to award 5 winners per year that promote environmental protection, sustainability, and management. In the 2022 contest, 5 different winners were awarded in different categories that included a waste-free world, clean our air, revive our oceans, protect and restore nature, and fix our climate. NotPla is a London-based startup founded by Pierre Paslia and Rodrigo Garcia Gonzalez. This intends to use seaweed in creating biodegradable alternatives to plastic packaging that can be composted with other biodegradables such as food waste. According to world records, 6.3 billion tons of plastic waste currently litter global seas and streets. Just 9% of all plastic ever produced has been recycled and 12% has been incinerated. So where does the rest lie? We could talk about landfills, oceans, and lakes. In the Clean Our Air category, Kenya's Mukuru Clean Stoves, founded by Charlotte Magai, emerged as the winners. Over 700 million people across Africa rely on traditional cookstoves, a clear factor in the emissions load from wood fuel and charcoal in homesteads. The project has seen Kenya save $10 million in fuel costs and anticipates to reach 1 million customers in the next 2 years and 10 million people in Africa in 10 years. Kaiti is an Indian startup founded by Satya Raghu and Saumya. This has developed a greenhouse-in-a-box farming model for smallholder farmers.
80% of the food on the planet is grown by small farmers like Reshma. But their reality is very different. They work hard all year long, but have absolutely no control over their incomes because of environmental risks. The truth is, for small farmers, hard work doesn't pay. We at Kheti are changing that.
Oman-based 44.01, named after the molecular weight of carbon dioxide, won the Fix Our Climate category. Aside from carbon storage that involves the use of disused oil wells and aquifers, 44.01 is providing a rather more realistic approach, peridotite mineralization of carbon dioxide.
Hi, I'm Talal, and I'm the founder and carbon general of 4401. We turn CO2 into rock using the natural power of peridotite mineralization. I grew up in the natural beauty of Oman, and I was taught about the importance of the environment from a young age. I always knew that this would be a way of life for me. At my last job, I was working at a sovereign technology fund when I came across a headline in the international press stating scientists had discovered the world's largest dead zone off the coast of Oman. This led me to explore why this massive sea had emerged with no oxygen content or sea life. I soon discovered it was all linked to CO2 emissions being absorbed by our oceans, and this led me to look at clean technologies and how they could help Oman and the world.
Now, that was the Earthshot Prize. We've had a chance to look into the different developments, and altogether, that's the global call, or the global call for climate action. So specifically, we look into different matters. And away from that, locally, back home, we shall be looking into the carbon trade, whereby the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement, had to devise means of promoting sustainable development. But how? Having the big players, the biggest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, paying a price for those emissions. But then how well has the market played out locally? Africa, Uganda, on different platforms. You have the Annex 1 parties and then the non-Annex 1 parties. But before that, let's take a look at Uganda's biggest problem. Prior to mitigating for air pollution and then land pollution, all forms of pollution. Let's look at Kampala and Uganda specifically. When you look at the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory, a 10-year spell period or plan that stretches from the base year 2005 right into 2015. When you look at it, we've had a gradual increase in the emissions, metric tons of carbon dioxide, right into a number, or rather a figure, that points to 90.01 metric tons of carbon dioxide. So what would you attribute this growth to? A couple of different contributors, from the automobile industry to the manufacturing industry to agriculture, then the changes in land use, and then forestry. We've had developments with the REDD+, reducing emissions from deforestation and then the destruction of forests, among other combative elements. So let's take a look at Kampala, for instance. Try to understand what is the burden, and then how are we trying to mitigate it, because it ideally contributes to the climate change call. So first, we'll take a look at Kampala's position and Uganda's position in general, from the activities that lead up to the changes that contribute to the global warming, and then the changes in the weather patterns, the climate patterns of the rising temperatures, and then the different elements that are of negative impact to the ecosystem. So first, Kampala and Uganda, understanding pollution.
The World Health Organization estimates indicate 4.2 million people dying from ambient air pollution per year. In many low and middle income countries, where Uganda is party to the former, there is limited data on pollution levels. The contributors and how much they do is one other challenging concern, not forgetting the prohibitive cost of air pollution monitors. Without this information, it's virtually impossible to motivate and design effective public responses.
The air quality levels in Kampala are bad and are not good. It's one of the most polluted cities in Africa. Of course, that's because we are monitoring air pollution. For those that are not monitoring, they don't even know whether it is high, or low. And to contextualize this, we are 5 to 7 times more polluted than the recommended. There is no pollution level that is recommended. Basically, pollution is not supposed to be there, but we are 5 to 7 times more polluted than what the World Health Organization expects.
Kampala, Uganda's capital, still doubles as the biggest industrial city, home to a buzzing working population in the 5 different divisions. It contributes largely to the Kampala-Mukono Industrial Corridor, a busy automobile industry, and an ever-growing settlement, all crucial areas to the sources of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, particulate matter, among others.
We have a network of 25 monitors across the city. Each of the Kampala divisions has 5 that we own as KCCA. But then there are many other institutions, including embassies, including research organizations at School of Public Health. There's another project, the AirCo project at Makerere University College of Computing, one at the Department of Chemistry, the US Embassy, and many other French embassy. They all have monitors. So we have over 100 monitors in Kampala. And since about 2020, early 2020, when KCCA started monitoring, we see that pollution is sustainably high, pollution levels, but the trend is worsening. And this is related to the level of industrialization that you're seeing, the many cars that people are buying and getting on the road. So we have two trends. One of the trends is the daily trend. We call it the diurnal variation of pollution. On any given day, how does it vary? We see that it is worse when people are going to work and worse when they are going away from work in the evening. If you plot many graphs of every Monday, you will actually see that every Monday, the pollution at 2 a.m., I mean at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m. in the night, is much lower than the pollution at 9 a.m. in the morning. And that is consistent every Monday or every Tuesday. Then the other one is now a trend for the entire year, from Jan to December. Generally, we see that when we have rainy season, pollution is lower. And that's very easy because then rain dissolves the pollutants and brings them back to the soil. And brings back to the soil. So you have it less. Outside that, then you want to see this quarter, September of this year. Is pollution higher than September of last year and September of the other year? You clearly see that there is a trend that shows us that pollution is worsening.
To reflect from a little backwards, according to data from the Ministry of Water and Environment, the 10 years greenhouse gas inventory from 2005 to 2015, for instance, indicates a 40.7% change in emissions of carbon dioxide equivalents, from 53.4 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents in 2005 to 90.1. In that period, the key contributor was land use and land use change and forestry, at 53.6 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, which are equal to 59.5%.
So in Kampala, you're looking at, instead of having about 12 that the WHO recommends as the level of PM 2.5, that is generally acceptable, not normal. There is no normal pollution. Pollution is not supposed to be there. You find many sites in the city here measuring up to 50, up to 70, up to 80. And this is worse when you have peak with traffic. So it's early in the morning, around 9, 8, when everyone is rushing to work. When they all park their cars, it somehow stabilizes. And again, rush hour in the evening when they are going home. But also moving slightly into around 8 p.m., which signifies most likely people have now reached home and they are cooking supper. So you see it correlates very well with the behavior of the public. So the public has a very big role in bringing this down.
Agriculture contributed 24.2 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents, equal to 26.9%. Energy had 9.6 metric tons, equivalent to 10.7%. And lastly was waste at 2 metric tons, equivalent to 2.3%.
So the pollution outside homes, the ambient air pollution that we're talking about, you have mobility, automobiles, you have cars. But most importantly, you have motorcycles. Motorcycles have 2-stroke engines. They cannot combust fuel very well. So the little fumes they release are very dangerous, more than even for old cars. But also you have construction equipment and other stationary machines like generators and other construction equipment. Then you have factories and industries, which are all over this city.
All right. Now the green economy still continues. So before we head into the break, there is something special that we shall be trying to understand locally and in this very program. So It basically is carbon trading. So when you talk about carbon trading, what comes into your mind? Do most people understand this? So basically, carbon trading is a mechanism that was designed reflecting off the challenges that we had before. So raising into the Paris Agreement, but before that, the Kyoto Protocol, we had the globe on its knees, and then designing means whereby the biggest polluters had to pay for their pollution load, their contribution to climate damage, and then development altogether. So Annex 1 parties have a mechanism to address carbon trading. Europe has an emissions trading system, the EU ETS, that basically collectively brings together the different players in the European Union. And those are the most developed countries. And they fall into Annex 1 party. So, however, from that, we have the non-Annex 1 parties, Africa, Asia, and then other areas. So, down here in Africa, carbon marketing, rather carbon trading is is more of a myth. So how does it come to that? Trying to create incentives for the emissions, for climate damage. It's quite crucial. But then who are the players? There are the people in here. So largely non-Annex 1 parties use what we call the clean development mechanism, other than the joint implementation mechanism and then the emissions trading system. So what is incorporated in the CDM? So many things, from the programs of activities whereby different projects are set up to mitigate or reduce emissions, right? Getting into net zero, whereby the amount of emissions that are emitted are equal to those that are cut out or sequestered. A net zero basically, and we've had so many people talking about it. So that's what exactly it is. So understanding carbon trading shall be of importance. When we come back from the break, we shall be trying so much to understand who are the players. Is there a legal framework for the trade to be operative down here in Africa? We have the Eastern Africa Carbon Alliance for carbon markets and then climate finance, involving 7 East African parties or countries: Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania. We could talk about Burundi. I talk about Kenya. So these different players, how best are they incorporating carbon trading into climate change mitigation and then sustainable development? That shall be right up next. But first, the break.
Smart 24, driving business.
But 3K for sending charges? Surely?
Tozina. Memi tugende.
Don't wait a little bit, please.
Angena kuangalia waiting charge.
Chikole flawless, hakuna hustle, no stress. Whether night or day, tuli okay. Wanga tuli ku flexi pay.
Don't hustle to pay the bills. Send or receive money. Chikole for less, ne flexi pay. Hold it.
Chikole for less with FlexiPay. Dial *291# to transact or download the FlexiPay app to get started. Stanbic Bank. It can be. Stanbic Bank is regulated by the Bank of Uganda, and customer deposits are protected by the Deposit Protection Fund of Uganda, up to 10 million shillings.
Say goodbye to paperwork and travel costs. Now every MTN customer can register to invest in securities anytime and anywhere with Zabu in a few simple steps. Step 1. Dial *292#. Step 2. Select option 1. Register with Zabu. Step 3. Enter your full names. Step 4. Enter your national identification number. Step 5. Enter your national identification card number. In 24 hours, you will receive an SMS confirming your registration. Congratulations, you are now ready to invest. Smart 24, driving business.
Yes, welcome back from the break. The green economy is the name of the show. Smart 24 TV is the name of the channel or television. Channel 372 on DSTV, channel 394 on GoTV. So in this very last end of the program, we shall be trying so much to understand carbon trading. Ideally, an incentive packaged mechanism whereby the biggest contributors to pollution load, climate change, have to pay a certain price for that. So we have the compliance markets. Compliance markets are basically instituted, let's say, by international coalitions. For instance, the European Union. It could be the African Union. And then national levels, per se. And then we have the voluntary markets. Voluntary markets are basically driven by maybe private parties that's indulged into setting up projects to offset the pollution load, the emissions load. So these are the two different kinds of mechanisms, or rather markets, under carbon trading. So ideally, when you talk about carbon trading in Africa, the question is, what's the trade? And then how can someone basically engage into it? So on a broader basis, Africa, and East Africa, to be specific, we have the Eastern Africa Alliance on carbon markets and then climate finance. So it basically brings together different players, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and then the different East African players. So how best is the trade faring in here in Uganda? It's quite questionable. Why? Because the different players know nothing about it, less information about it. And if it's a price to pay or to be paid for the emissions, how much can these people that are setting up the projects get from their involvement, from setting up the avenue? That's another question. So we shall be trying so much to understand how exactly can the different players engage themselves. And then what are the challenges? I talked about the clean development mechanism, which is the biggest player down here as compared to the joint implementation for the Annex 1 parties, and then the emissions trading system still. So first, we'll take a look at carbon trading. How best can the people that are involved or that are interested in creating the platform, the different project activities or projects to offset the emissions load, and then how basically can they get something off it? And then the understanding of the market itself is quite dynamic. The legal framework, quite questionable in Uganda here. But then it gets down to the Ministry of Water and Environment, because usually every country has a DNA, that's a designated national authority. And in Uganda, all these are some of the key areas of concern. So first, let's try to understand this.
Uganda's approach towards carbon trading, like any other countries involved in the international offsetting mechanism, has to rely on a designated national authority. One that drafts a legal framework where emissions reduction projects have to be assessed and certified in relation to the international framework.
The demand for carbon trade is growing by the day, and Uganda has a high potential to go into carbon trading. Reason being that Uganda is very rich in natural capital, in the natural resources, forests, wetlands, all those ecosystems. We are very rich, and those are carbon sinks. So we need to prepare ourselves and position ourselves very well and have all the readiness mechanisms in place.
Implementation has been fostered by the National Climate Change Act that gives force to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the 2050 Long-Term Strategy on Climate Change, plus the nationally determined contributions in 2016 and the latest update in September 2022.
I can't even say it's a new concept in Uganda, but it's a concept that has been there and discussions are ongoing. There are many international companies that would want to offset their footprint in terms of carbon sequencing, and they have approached the National Forestry Authority. Negotiations are ongoing, but there are also private companies or NGOs that are already in that business, and they are acting as negotiators between the farmers and the traders of carbon. And yeah, it's making a contribution to restoration and conservation of the trees. Because with this business, they fund you, you're not supposed to cut these trees up to a certain age. So that means we are sure of 30 years or 10 years or 20 years of the forest cover maintained very well. So it's playing a good role and a contribution to the conservation of the forest.
The updated NDC depicts a 24.7% gross economy mitigation target until 2030. So how exactly does the local community reflect on the market?
Yeah, carbon trading is a market mechanism whereby the polluter, those ones who are said to be polluting the environment, pay credit to those ones who can depollute, meaning that they need to buy, for example, licenses, and that money that is got from there, then it should be again transferred to either other countries or other places which can depollute the environment or which can reduce the emissions which they are discharging into the environment. So in that process, we can see that either the countries which are receiving the credit from the other heavily polluting countries, for example, USA, in that process, they are trying to use the countries like Uganda, for example. Uganda, we may not be discharging so much.
Majority identify it in relation to afforestation and reforestation projects, which are similarly important areas in carbon trading. The ambiguous regulations, market access project assessment, among other considerations, have been critical to many in the African setting, and different voices express their concerns on the market in different ways.
When it comes in terms of carbon trade, then Uganda stands to benefit in that we have, for example, a favorable kind of environment that we can afford to grow trees. That in some cases, some big industries can actually pay such that some of the carbon dioxide that is being emitted can be offset by, for example, acreage of trees that are grown in another world. That if we have, and I think that there are a number of companies that are now involved in this carbon trade, that you put up a plantation, and then you are paid to maintain this plantation for a number of years. But actually what is being done is that an industry somewhere in the world is emitting excess carbon dioxide, and that excess carbon dioxide, they pay it in form of a fine, which is monetary, and then that money is used to pay a grower in Uganda to maintain a bigger forest, which in principle is going to absorb some of the carbon dioxide from the environment. That the other manufacturer is producing carbon dioxide, but this forest is also absorbing some of the carbon dioxide which is being produced. Somehow, this is how the system of the carbon trade works. That someone can emit more than what is permissible for that facility, and then the fine which is paid for this emission is now given to someone else as an incentive to maintain a bigger forest plantation, which can help to absorb some of the carbon dioxide from the environment.
Now, different individuals have different perspectives when you ask them about carbon trading. Okay, so generally that's the trend, from the people that know something about it to the people that barely know anything about it. And then let's basically talk about the clean development mechanism. Earlier on in the Earth Short Prize, we had a look at Mukuru stoves. Now, Mukuru stoves is just a reflection of the different projects that are into the clean development mechanism. Unlike afforestation and then reforestation, there are projects that are basically designed in different ways to limit the damage on the ecosystem, but they have a representation in terms maybe of finance for such efforts. Now, this is where the different projects come in. It could be in hydro, solar energy. It could be the clean stoves as efforts towards cleaning up our air go. So understanding the clean development mechanism is quite broad, and carbon trading is quite ambiguous because it's regulated by different policies, by different frameworks. At the apex, you have the UN that basically looks into and then ratifies or certifies the different projects that come through when you look at the executive board of the CDM. And now here in Uganda, earlier on intimated about the DNA, the Designated National Authority. And basically here you talk about the Ministry of Water and Environment, and particularly the Climate Change Department. So the legal framework is quite needy. And then the different players, private players that are into it, the numbers are meager. So ask yourself, who are the people that I would reach out to in case I have a project? And this is where one of the biggest players, the Uganda Carbon Bureau, comes in. But then reaching out to these people is quite tricky. And then the information relaying it out to the different players in the economy still is questionable. People don't perceive it in perhaps good faith. So these are some of the challenges. So first, let's try to understand the clean development mechanism. What kind of projects sit into it as far as carbon trading goes?
I came up with the idea of Mukuru Clean Stores in Mukuru, which is one of the biggest slums in Nairobi. At 16, I became a mom, and when my daughter turned 2, she suffered a very severe burn injury caused by the traditional stove we were using. Cooking stoves are the biggest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, especially in this part of the world. I wanted to build a more stable stove for my community, and that is how the idea of Mukuru Clean Stoves was born. So we used recycled metal to build a $10 stove, and then we built it so that when you burn any type of solid fuel in it, like briquettes for instance, you only need about half of it compared to a traditional stove to cook the same amount of meals for your family. We make an ethanol stove, and coupled with the stove, families are able to burn a fuel that is 100% clean, so it produces 0% of toxic smoke. What worries me the most?
In Uganda, majorly, when you look at the clean development mechanisms, in fact, it is the individuals who come out to in the markets. They are trying, in fact, to look at how they can survive, be innovative, by not from, let's say, in an organized way from up. They are the ones who draw their trumpets to be actually included in those mechanisms. For example, you can look at the energies in the area of energy. We can look at, for example, these energy-saving stoves. We look at companies which come in about solar, because we have so many people researchers, who are even working on solar energies and whatever. Even here at Chambogo, we have one who is in renewable energies, and recently we are in Munyonyo doing what. But you see the response to help that person in order to bring the technologies to the community is a bit lower.
In reference to data from the East African Alliance on Carbon Markets and Climate Finance, Kenya's positional involvement in carbon trading is just a step ahead of most of the other partner states, Uganda inclusive.
Currently, Uganda does not have regulations to go into carbon trade, and we are in the process of doing that. Secondly, we need to have all the architecture to ensure that we can participate effectively and benefit properly, enormously from carbon trade. I want to say that carbon trading is going to be one of the most expensive commodities in the years to come. So Uganda has a very high potential to tap onto that.
Scanty information in regard to such projects. With afforestation and reforestation, Uganda's land cover has been on the decline, currently sitting at just 11.66%, equivalent to 28.16 square kilometers of the total 241,555 square kilometers.
but the process is a bit complicated. You have to go through certain steps. So usually those are the steps that let us down. Eventually, when you have already, now you have your carbon credits to sell, then they will tell you that you never did A, B, C, D. So it is very difficult for these carbon credits to be sold. But those are things we are looking at. That if for instance, I know that there are projects that are trying to sell products that you can use to make water safe for drinking without necessarily boiling it. Because you know that most people boil it using charcoal. So you want to make sure they are not boiling that water. They are using something else. Now, this something else generates carbon credits that you can sell in the international market. So you want to have a product that will come here, generates you carbon credits that you can sell in the international market. You use that money to offset the price of this product. So that a product that would be $3 is now $1. Because I know at the balance of $2, I will get it as I sell my carbon credits. And that's where we are moving. It's a bit more sustainable. All we need our main aim is to make sure that the problem of climate change can be turned into a business opportunity. We've been struggling to make sure that, wow, there is climate change here, there is this issue, is adverse. How does this become a business opportunity for people?
Uganda's population has been on the rise since way back. Let's take 1980 as a base year, for instance. From 12.64 million Ugandans to 16.67 million in 1991. 36.16 in 2015, 44.9 million to that. But what do the growing numbers point to? Changes in land use, a rise in industrial processes and product use, more agricultural activity, among other issues, all a concern for sustainable development.
The challenge that we have as National Forestry Authority when we are carrying out our activities of managing the Central Forest Reserves is, of late, we've seen a trend of creation of land titles, private land titles in Central Forest Reserves. And this has costed us in terms of degrading the forest and also costed us in terms of funds. Once titles are created, the owners would want to occupy the area.
Now, the conversation regarding carbon trading is quite broad and technical, but then it gets to be really understandable as time goes on, and then trying to understand the different mechanisms, how it plays out, the different players, the regulations, basically the legal framework, and how best it can be pushed so that every individual down into agriculture, for instance, can incorporate maybe agroforestry into their different projects. So the conversation is quite broad, from the limitations such as issuing out land titles in Central Forest Reserves, and then in areas that are eco-sensitive, basically, to other challenges. All these contribute to the negativities and then the robust challenges that limit the mainstreaming of the carbon trade and then the market itself. From the credits that are issued by the people that create these projects to the people that buy the credits, we have allowed emissions, you would say. So all this is quite interesting, but down here and how it plays out, it's quite technical, quite controversial, you would say. What am I benefiting from implementing this project, and how best can I do that? Those are all questions in here. So from carbon trading, we shall be looking into many other elements. Earlier on, when we talked about Talal Hassan and then the 44.01 innovation, we talked about carbon capture, because they basically capture carbon using technology. And technology transfer, technology approach is one of the biggest challenges in Africa and Uganda particularly, from monitoring the pollution load to implementing maybe the carbon capture strategies that involve different players, all those. So we shall be looking into different things, from the carbon trading to the carbon capture, among other elements that involve sustainable development. So from me and the team, I say thank you. And I will still sign out for now until we meet again. Smart 24 TV is the channel. I'm Ivan TIBENKANA.
Smart 24 driving business.